What would you do if the very person meant to protect your peace opened the door for someone else to destroy it? She didn't raise her voice, not even when the door locked behind her. She didn't cry for long, not even when she realized she was trapped, pregnant, with no way to call for help. Because somewhere inside her, Lena Burke already knew. People like Marlette Dane didn't break things in rage. They broke them in silence. And the most terrifying part, no one would have believed her if she hadn't written it all down. This isn't just a story about a mother-in-law. It's about a quiet woman, a cold house, and the cruel decisions people make when power is all they care about. But most of all, this is about survival. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that watches, waits, and walks out stronger. If you've ever trusted someone who let you down, or been gaslit by people who smile while they corner you, stay with us, because one handwritten journal changed everything. Lena Burke had a gift most people missed. She could walk into a room and feel everything. The tension in shoulders, the silence after sharp words, the quiet fatigue in someone's eyes. That's why she became a physical therapist, not for the money, not for the prestige, but because she liked helping people feel human again. Her days were simple. Mornings began with jasmine tea. Mid-mornings were for her father, who had survived a mild stroke and now used a cane. She'd help him stretch, eat, read the paper. At noon, she'd head to the clinic. And every evening, poetry. Not the romantic kind either. She liked the kind that stung a little. The kind that said things people were too afraid to say out loud. She didn't have a boyfriend, or time for one. Her friends often teased her, "You're 29 going on 59. But Lena didn't mind. She'd grown up in Asheville, in a part of town where neighbors still brought casseroles after funerals. Her mother had passed when she was 17, and since then it had been her and her dad. Nothing loud, nothing fancy, but everything honest. And then she met him at a health fair. The hall was buzzing with vendors that day. Chiropractic tables, smoothie blenders, flashy fitness machines. Lena was helping an elderly patient walk between booths when someone offered her a bottled water. She turned, tall, trim, polished, not a salesman. His posture was too relaxed for that. "Long day?" he asked, handing her the water. She hesitated, then accepted. "Thanks. No pressure, but our booth's less chaotic if you need a seat." The sign behind him read, "Wellspring Equity, Lifestyle Investments." So, finance. She almost kept walking, but something about his tone made her pause. He wasn't selling anything, not to her, not with his voice at least. She sat, just for a moment. His name was Alric Dane, venture capital analyst, lived 15 minutes away, liked hiking, hated email chains, preferred in-person conversations, and, surprisingly, had just started therapy himself. They talked for 20 minutes, then 40. When she stood to leave, he said, "I'd like to talk again. Not about money, just about more of this." She smiled. "We'll see." But she did want to talk again, and they did, every day. They didn't fall in love like fireworks. It was more like watching sunrise over water. Steady, layered, worth waiting for. He asked about her father, visited with soup. She asked about his late father, listened when he talked about expectations and family pressure. Their pace was quiet, but their connection wasn't dull. It felt safe, curious, mutual. After 7 months, he asked if she wanted to meet his mother. That was the first time Lena felt something shift. They met at Marlette's estate, a sleek, high-glass property perched on a hill that overlooked the old city. Marlette Dane stepped into the room like she already owned your attention. Blonde, perfectly tailored beige coat, barely their smile. She reached for Lena's hand, cool fingers, firm grip. "So, you're the woman Alric's been talking about." Lena smiled softly. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Dane. Call me Marlette." But she said it like it was a test. Dinner was civil, perfectly prepared, perfectly silent in all the wrong ways. Marlette asked about Lena's background, a little too formally. "No wine? Are you sure?" Lena shook her head politely. I don't drink, not even on special occasions. I never developed the taste. Marlette hummed. Interesting. The night ended with a forced hug. Marlette's hand never touched Lena's back. In the car, Alrik looked over. She's particular. But she'll warm up. I promise. Lena nodded. But deep down, something inside her had already locked up. Alrik was different around Marlette. Not cruel, not fake, but smaller, calmer, almost like he asked for permission with his posture. Still, he held Lena's hand the whole ride home. I know she's intense, but I don't want that to come between us. Lena answered honestly. It won't, but I won't pretend it didn't feel cold. He kissed her hand. Then I'll warm it up. Watch me. And for a while, he did. They moved in together, not into the estate, but into a modest house with creaky stairs and mismatched mugs. They bought a dog, painted the kitchen walls, argued over who cooked better pasta, and laughed at how bad they both were. And Marlette? She stayed distant, polite on holidays, never raised her voice, never raised a finger to help. But Lena noticed how Alrik shifted after every call from his mother, like he was bracing himself for a conversation that hadn't even happened yet. Alrik proposed on a Thursday. There was no audience, no violinist, no roses on a beach. Just them, in the kitchen. She was barefoot, in an oversized shirt, stirring soup with one hand and flipping through a crossword with the other. He pulled out a ring box like it had been burning in his pocket for days. I don't need a perfect life, he said, just a peaceful one. And I've only known that with you. Lena stared at the ring, not because it was huge, it wasn't, but because it was his mother's. She hesitated. He saw it. She gave it to me a long time ago. It's the one thing she said I could do with as I pleased. That softened her. A little. She said yes. And for a while it was beautiful. They married at a small garden chapel. Her father walked her down the aisle, gripping her arm tightly as if afraid she'd vanish. Alrik looked overwhelmed with joy. His friends smiled, whispered to each other, impressed by the ceremony's simplicity. And Marlette? She wore black, a tailored dress, sleek hat, and no visible emotion. She gave a speech at the reception, polite, controlled, a little too practiced. To my son, she said, raising a glass, who always believed in building his own path, even when the path veered from tradition. People clapped. Lena's hands stayed in her lap. Married life wasn't glamorous, but it was good. They split chores, cooked together, took evening walks with their dog, watched documentaries and fell asleep on the couch. Alrik traveled a lot, but when he was home, he was present, until the company merger, until the layoff, until the silence. Lena found out she was pregnant 3 months after the wedding. She didn't tell him right away. She wanted it to be special, planned a small dinner with a tiny gift box containing the positive test, wrapped in tissue paper. Alrik opened it, stared. For a second, he didn't breathe. Then he laughed. Then he cried. He cupped her face with both hands. We're having a daughter. I feel it. They danced in the kitchen barefoot. They made plans, nursery colors, baby names, a parenting class. But that joy had an expiration date, because 2 weeks later, Alrik was let go. No warnings, no severance, no backup plan. The stress hit hard. He withdrew, not cruelly, not loudly. He just went quiet. Bills started stacking. The guest room stayed untouched. No crib, no paint. He tried to get back into the industry, but the timing was bad. Too many layoffs. Not enough openings. Every rejection chipped at his confidence. That's when Marlette called. She offered a solution. Come stay at the estate. The space will help. The staff will assist. You'll be comfortable. And Alrik can rebuild without the pressure. Lena felt the weight of that offer in her chest. No, she said quietly. I think we're okay. But Alrik was tired, frustrated, embarrassed. It's temporary, he said. Just until I get back on my feet. Lena hesitated. You know what that house does to you? He paused. This is bigger than ego, Lena. We're having a baby. They moved in on a rainy Tuesday. The estate hadn't changed. Still cold, still tall, still white on white, glass on glass. Marlette greeted them with champagne, which Lena declined, and 3 live-in staff members who were instructed not to speak unless spoken to. "This will be good for both of you," Marlette said with a smile. "A family should be under one roof during such a sacred time." Lena watched the way the staff avoided eye contact, the way their movements were rehearsed. Like the house had rules they'd memorized, but never spoke aloud. Alrik kissed her forehead. "We'll be out of here in no time." But time stretched thin in that house. Within 2 weeks, things began to change. Alrik had his own room, just to focus, with his books and laptop. Lena stayed in the West Wing, farther from him, closer to Marlette. The house had 2 kitchens, but Lena wasn't allowed in the main one. The staff brought meals, checked on her, but never lingered. She tried to stay positive, took walks around the garden, read to her belly, kept her journal updated. But subtle things started happening. Her charger vanished. Her prenatal vitamins were replaced with older ones, different packaging, faded labels. She asked about it. Marlette smiled. "Oh, you must have mixed them up. Pregnancy brain is a funny thing." When she told Alrik, he half listened. "You're just anxious," he said. This move wasn't easy on either of us. He didn't ask for details, didn't look at the pills, didn't follow up. Her phone was dead. She reached for her spare charger. It was gone. She went downstairs and found the main hallway door locked from the outside. She waited. Maybe it was a mistake. The next day, she asked about it. Marlette acted surprised. "That door sticks sometimes." Lena started keeping track, documenting every shift, every silence, every locked door, every changed item. She wrote in her journal daily, hid it under the mattress, not because she thought it would save her, but because if she disappeared, someone should know the truth. By the 7th month, Lena didn't sleep much. Alrik was barely around. "Meetings," he said. He didn't notice the swelling in her ankles, the bruises on her lower back from the too firm mattress, the silence in her eyes when he kissed her goodnight. She stopped asking for help, started writing more. Not poetry this time. Facts. She took my charger again. The closet was locked. She watched me eat. I can feel the baby turning slower today. No one was reading it, but it felt like survival. One Friday, snow blanketed the estate. Thick, heavy, muffling sound. Lena woke up to silence. No lights, no heat, no phone. She stepped into the hallway. Every bulb dark. The staff was gone. The house felt empty, or too full. She called out. No answer. She walked carefully toward the stairwell, holding her belly. And then, a push. Not hard, but unexpected. Her foot slipped. Her scream never made it past the carpeted walls. She landed on the cold floor below. The door slammed shut above her, and locked. She was in the basement, and her baby kicked, just once, like a whisper for help. What would you do if someone quietly erased your safety, one piece at a time? Have you ever felt trapped, not physically, but emotionally, in a place you couldn't leave? Lena trusted the wrong hands, and now she's paying the price. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever felt watched in your own home? The basement smelled like dust and damp paint. Concrete floor, one hanging bulb, a rusted folding chair, storage boxes stacked like silent witnesses. Lena sat in the corner, clutching her belly, shaking from the cold that settled into her bones. The house above her felt far away. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was cruel. She tried the door. Nothing. No windows. No vents low enough to reach. The baby shifted again. Not strong. Slow. Tired. Lena closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She had to stay calm. Panic would only make it worse. For both of them. Above her, the house carried on. Marlette made calls. Checked emails. Told the staff Lena had gone visiting for a few days. Alrik was still gone, allegedly at a networking retreat. No one questioned her, because Marlette Dane didn't lie. She simply rewrote the script just enough to sound like truth. 12 hours passed. No food, no light, except the flickering bulb. Lena tried to sleep sitting up. Her back ached. Her legs cramped. The baby didn't move again until dawn. That small thump was the only thing that kept her sane. She whispered to her belly, "We're okay. We're going to be okay." She wasn't sure if she believed it, but she said it anyway. Upstairs, Maureen noticed something was wrong. She was the youngest maid on staff, only 22. Hired less than a year ago, she mostly handled laundry and guest rooms. That morning, she knocked on Lena's door to clean. No answer. She opened the door. The bed hadn't been slept in. The chargers were gone. So were the prenatal vitamins. Her heart began to race. She made the bed, but as she smoothed the corners, something shifted underneath the mattress. A book. She hesitated, then pulled it out. A black, leather-bound journal. She opened it and read the first page, then the second. By the third, her hands were shaking. Inside were dates, times, descriptions. My pills were replaced. She stared at me during dinner and didn't blink once. The door was locked again. I don't think I'm safe anymore. The last entry was scribbled quickly. Lights out. No one around. My phone is gone. She's going to do something. Maureen looked around the room, slowly backed out, shut the door, went down the hall like everything was fine, but her chest was pounding. She knew the stories about the Dane family, stories whispered by other staff, about how Marlette had handled a former tenant dispute quietly, about a housekeeper who was fired for not fitting in. This was different. This wasn't politics or pride. This was danger. Maureen went to the kitchen. Marlette was there. "Tea?" she asked casually, not looking up. "Yes, ma'am." Maureen poured hot water. Sugar, honey, stirred slowly, trying to act normal. "You seem nervous," Marlette noted. Maureen forced a smile. "Didn't sleep well, ma'am." Marlette nodded, sipping her cup. "Let me know if Lena returns from her little getaway. I'd like to have a word." Maureen blinked. "Of course." Then she left the room and began to shake. Lena was awake again, her legs numb. She'd tried screaming a few hours ago, but the walls were too thick. No one came. She whispered a prayer, not for escape, for her child. "Please stay strong. Please stay alive." She felt a flutter, small, faint, but there. "I'm still here too," she whispered. Maureen paced the guest corridor. If she opened the basement, she'd be caught. There were cameras, motion sensors, but if she didn't act, that woman could die. That baby could die. She grabbed her coat, slipped the journal into her sleeve, walked calmly toward the back gate. Marlette didn't stop her. The other staff didn't notice. But once she was on the street, Maureen broke into a run. Snow was falling, thick, heavy. She didn't have her phone. It had to be a landline, somewhere off the estate. There was only one place she could think of, the Crawfords' property down the road, half a mile away. Lena passed out for a short while. She dreamed of her father, of jasmine tea, of sunlight on the porch, of the first time Ulrich touched her stomach and whispered, "I can't wait to meet you." When she woke, her lips were dry. Her body ached, but she was still breathing. That meant she had time. Maureen reached the Crawfords' front porch, knocked like her life depended on it. When the door opened, she blurted, "Call 911, please. It's the Dane estate. She's locked in the basement. She's pregnant. She's not safe." Mrs. Crawford blinked. "What?" "I work there," Maureen said quickly. "I found her journal. I don't have time to explain. Please." The old woman disappeared into the house, came back with a phone. Maureen dialed with trembling fingers. 911. "What's your emergency?" She didn't hesitate. "I need help. There's a woman, Lena Burke. She's pregnant. Her mother-in-law locked her in the basement. It's been over a day. I read her journal. I think she might be in labor." The dispatcher paused. Are you still at the scene? No. I had to run. They can't know I'm the one calling. We're dispatching officers now. Maureen gave them the address, then hung up. At the estate, Marlette was on a conference call when she saw the lights from the patrol cars cut through the snowfall. She froze. The call dropped. Within minutes, the house was surrounded. Downstairs, Lena heard the pounding on the front door, then muffled voices, then feet rushing toward the basement. A key. The door unlocked. Light poured in. A voice. Ma'am, can you hear me? A paramedic dropped to his knees. We've got her. She's alive. She's responsive. He pressed a hand to her wrist. Stay with me. You're safe now. Lena opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just tears. Marlette stood in the foyer, composed. I don't know what this is about, she said. One officer stepped forward. We've had an anonymous tip and a written journal stating your daughter-in-law was being held against her. She left on her own, Marlette replied coolly. She needed time. She was found locked in your basement. Marlette raised a brow. That door sticks sometimes. The officer held up a Ziploc bag. The journal says otherwise. So does your security footage. Marlette's jaw tightened. But she said nothing more. They placed her under arrest. She didn't struggle. Because Marlette Dane didn't fight in public, she waited. But this time, silence wouldn't save her. The ambulance ride was cold, fast, and filled with quiet tension. Lena lay strapped to the gurney, a thin blanket pulled over her swollen belly. Her skin was pale, her eyes bloodshot, but her pulse was steady. She didn't speak much, only nodded or shook her head when the paramedic asked questions. Do you know how far along you are? She nodded. 7.5 months. Any pain? She blinked slowly. Just tired. Any contractions? Not yet. Any allergies? No. They scribbled notes, monitored vitals, kept their voices low, calm. But they could all see it. This wasn't just a wellness check. It was rescue. At the hospital, the triage team rushed her into a private maternity suite. Blankets, 4 fluids, a fetal monitor. The nurse placed a small round sensor on her belly. Everyone waited. For a beat. There was nothing. Then, a slow, steady rhythm. The baby's heartbeat. Lena exhaled like she'd been holding it in for years. She's okay? She asked. Voice cracked. She's okay. The nurse nodded. Lena let the tears come then. Silent, hot, cleansing. Detectives arrived soon after. They didn't overwhelm her. Just one. A woman named Sergeant Rena Vega. Kind eyes, soft voice. She waited until the room cleared and sat at the foot of the bed. You don't have to talk right now, she said, but we need to know what happened. Lena didn't hesitate. I wrote it all down. You mean the journal? She nodded. Under the mattress. Is this the first time she's done something like this? Lena looked out the window. No, it's just the first time someone believed me. Meanwhile, Maureen sat alone in the police station break room. She hadn't been arrested, but she was under review. They had to verify her story, check her background, make sure she wasn't involved. She had no lawyer, no parents in town, no one but her conscience. When Sergeant Vega entered the room, Maureen stood. Did she make it out? She's stable, Vega said. And so is the baby. Maureen exhaled. Her shoulders slumped in relief. She never screamed, she said quietly. That's what scared me. She never made noise. She wrote. Maureen nodded. That's what saved her. Marlette sat in a holding cell with perfect posture. She asked for a lawyer, gave no statements, denied all accusations. Her official story, Lena left the estate on her own. The door had a known defect. There was no motive, no intent. When asked about the journal, she said, anyone can write a story. When shown the security footage of her closing the basement door and turning the key, she said nothing. Ulrich returned 2 days later. He claimed he'd been out of state, a weekend networking retreat with no reception. He said he didn't know where Lena was, assumed she was resting, said he'd been blindsided by the news of her hospitalization. When detectives showed him photos of the basement, he paled. I didn't know she was down there. They asked if he'd ever suspected his mother of hurting Lena. He paused. Too long. I thought maybe they didn't get along. But not this. Never this. They didn't arrest him, but they didn't believe him either. In the hospital, Lena stayed quiet. She didn't ask for Alrik, didn't mention him, didn't react when he walked into the room 3 days later. He brought flowers. She didn't look at them. He sat down, reached for her hand. She moved it. You didn't come, she said. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't check. He lowered his gaze. I was trying to figure things out. For us, for her, he gestured to her stomach. I was trying to get back on track. She looked at him. You left me with her. He didn't have an answer, just silence. And for the first time, Lena realized silence had always been his escape, not hers. The hospital released her 2 days later under temporary protective supervision. Social services offered a secured apartment in a transitional facility for high-risk women. Clean, private, monitored. She accepted. Maureen came to visit, brought a small stuffed bear for the baby. They didn't talk much, but when Maureen stood to leave, Lena touched her arm. Thank you, she said. Maureen's eyes watered. You saved yourself. I just opened the door. The story hit local news outlets first. Daughter-in-law found locked in basement. Mother-in-law charged. Woman claims pregnancy made her a target. Dane estate under investigation for coercive abuse. Then it hit national outlets, talk shows, morning news. Even a podcast about family betrayal reached out for comment. Lena declined every interview. This wasn't a story to her. It was her life. And she was done letting others rewrite it. Marlette's lawyers fought hard, tried to throw out the journal, claimed it was fictional, stress-induced writing from a hormonal woman. The prosecution pushed back, presented digital timestamps, medication swaps, staff interviews, and most damning of all, the security. Footage of Marlette locking the door, looking straight into the camera, and walking away. The footage had no audio, but her face said everything. Alrik never visited again. Lena didn't ask. She focused on small things, breathing exercises, prenatal care, learning to sleep without flinching at every creak in the floorboards. She started writing again, not journals, but letters to her unborn daughter. Letters about safety, about strength, about soft-spoken power. Letters that didn't promise life would be easy, only that she'd never let her feel invisible. On a rainy Monday, Lena went into labor. Maureen was the one who drove her to the hospital. The birth was long, complicated. But when her baby girl let out that first cry, Lena broke down completely. Because in that cry, loud, strong, defiant, was everything Marlette had tried to silence, and everything Lena had survived to protect. The hospital room felt warmer than any place Lena had known in months, not because of the thermostat, but because of her daughter. Small, swaddled, pink. Her name was Noraya, not after anyone in the family, not a name from her past, just one she'd found in a book of names meaning light. And that's what the baby was, light, in a life that had nearly gone dark. Lena sat upright, her back still sore, legs trembling when she stood. But when the nurse offered to wheel her down for daily checks, she politely declined. She wanted to walk, wanted to feel her strength return, 1 foot at a time. Noraya barely cried, just small whimpers, soft and subtle, like her mother. But her presence was loud. Maureen came again on day 2. She brought tea and a box of wipes. She'd stayed quiet through the press chaos, declined interviews, changed her phone number. But she never stopped showing up for Lena. They sat in the hospital recliners, side by side. Maureen cradled the baby, while Lena sipped from her cup. She's perfect, Maureen whispered. She's here, Lena replied. That's more than I thought I'd get. You're strong. No, Lena said softly. I was just still. And sometimes That's how strength looks. The detectives came again, this time with a new tone. They needed her help now, not just her story. Her cooperation in Marlette's prosecution would be key. Her testimony, along with a journal, could lock in a sentence. "She'll try to cut a deal," Detective Vega warned. "Your testimony is the one thing she can't silence." Lena nodded. "I'll testify, not for revenge, but so the next woman wouldn't be doubted." 2 weeks later, she was discharged. No flowers, no balloons, no headlines, just her and Noraya, and a fresh start. They moved into a rental in a quiet town, about 3 hours from Asheville. A place with no legacy, no whispers, no Danish state hanging in the background. The apartment was small. 2 rooms, a shared garden, a tired carpet that held a faint smell of lemon cleaner. But to Lena, it felt like safety. At night, she wrote letters, one each night, to Noraya. Sometimes they were long, sometimes they were 2 lines. But each one was a promise that her daughter would never be shamed into silence, that she would never be trapped behind a locked door and called too soft. That softness was not a flaw. It was survival with a quiet face. The trial date was set for the following spring. Marlette Dane pled not guilty. Her defense leaned on reputation, that she was a respected businesswoman, that she had no history of violence, that this was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a troubled young woman. Lena wasn't surprised. She knew how people like Marlette worked. With charm, with money, with calculated distance. But she also knew truth. And now, so did the world. Ulrich reached out once. A letter. 3 paragraphs. It wasn't an apology. It was an explanation that he felt overwhelmed, that he didn't know what to believe, that everything fell apart too quickly for him to process. Lena folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and never wrote back. She wasn't angry. She was done. There was a difference. Life began to find rhythm. She woke up early, fed Noraya, made her tea, started journaling again. This time not about survival, but about small things. Rain tapping the window, baby socks drying on the heater, the smell of oatmeal, laughter between feeding breaks. She started to feel herself again, not the woman she used to be, but someone new, wiser, sharper, calmer. One afternoon, Maureen arrived with a surprise, a stack of letters, anonymous, all addressed to the woman in the basement, some from women who'd survived controlling in-laws, some from men who hadn't believed their wives until they read Lena's story. One note simply read, "I never had a Maureen, but now I know I needed one. Thank you." Lena cried reading them, not out of sadness, but because she realized something. Her survival wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to anyone who had ever whispered, "I don't feel safe," and been ignored. Noraya giggled that night for the first time. A real laugh. Lena held her close, and for the first time in months, she laughed too. Not out of relief, out of joy. Pure, present joy. Spring arrived slowly. The town thawed. Snow on rooftops melted into thin streams along the sidewalks. Children played outside again. Neighbors sat on porches. Life moved at a steady pace. For Lena, each warm day felt like a breath she had not taken in months. She carried Noraya everywhere. Grocery runs, evening walks, doctor visits, even to the small community library 2 blocks away. People smiled when they saw her. They didn't stare. They didn't whisper. They simply treated her like a woman rebuilding her life. She liked that more than anything. The trial preparation began with a phone call. Sergeant Vega's voice was clear. "We need you at the courthouse next week for a pre-hearing meeting." Lena stood by her window while holding Noraya against her chest. "I'll be there." "You're not alone," Vega added. "We'll walk through everything together." That reassurance settled something inside Lena. She had been alone before, in a basement, in silence. She wasn't alone now. At the courthouse, she met the lead prosecutor, a firm but patient woman named Taylor Harrow. Taylor walked her through what to expect. The questions, the setting, The atmosphere. It can feel tense, Taylor warned. But stay steady. Answer clearly. We have your journal. We have the footage. We have staff statements. Your truth is consistent. Lena nodded. I'm ready. She said the words without shaking. She meant them. The next few days were heavy with preparation. Lena reread her journal entries. Some made her hands tremble. Some made her pause and close her eyes. Some she barely remembered writing. Each entry was a piece of her mind during months of quiet fear. She didn't read them as a victim now. She read them as someone who survived. Maureen came to visit one evening. She helped fold baby clothes while Lena went through her notes. You're stronger than you think, Maureen said quietly. Lena smiled. So are you? Maureen set down a tiny yellow onesie. I still think about that house. Sometimes I wake up and check the locks. I know it sounds silly. It doesn't, Lena replied. That house wasn't safe. Not for me, not for you. Maureen nodded. Thank you for saying that. They sat together in silence. Safe silence. The kind that didn't corner you. The kind that let you breathe. When the pre-trial hearing arrived, the courthouse halls were filled with reporters, microphones, cameras, curious faces. Lena wore a simple navy dress and held her daughter close. She didn't answer questions. Taylor guided her straight through the crowd. Inside the courtroom, Marlette sat at the defense table. Perfect posture, neutral expression, hair pulled back in her usual style. She looked untouched by scandal, like she still controlled the narrative. Her eyes met Lena's for a brief second. Cold, steady, unapologetic. Lena didn't flinch. She walked past her and sat beside Taylor. Marlette looked away first. Small victory, quiet one. But it mattered. The judge entered. The room hushed. The hearing began. The prosecution presented their opening overview. The timeline. The evidence. The footage. The defense replied with a predictable strategy. Misunderstanding. Emotional distress. No clear proof of intent. Pregnancy confusion. They tried to paint Lena as fragile, overwhelmed, confused by hormones. Some of the spectators shifted uncomfortably. Lena stayed calm. She had lived through far worse than a courtroom full of strangers. Taylor called her forward. Lena placed Noraya's carrier next to the witness stand. A court aide watched the baby while Lena raised her right hand. The oath felt heavy, but necessary. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, breathed slowly. Taylor asked simple questions first. Where were you living at the time? When did you begin noticing changes in the house? What made you start writing the journal? Lena answered clearly, honestly, no extra words. Then came the harder questions. What happened the night you fell down the stairs? Did you believe someone pushed you? What did you hear after the door closed? Lena's voice didn't waver. I believed someone pushed me. I heard the door lock. I heard her voice through the vent. Some people in the courtroom gasped softly. The defense attorney stood. Objection. The judge motioned for him to explain. Her testimony is based on memory influenced by trauma. The judge turned to Lena. Did you write about this that same night? Yes. Did you include these details? Yes. Overruled. Lena stayed steady. When the defense questioned her, their tone shifted. Sharper, more pointed. Mrs. Dane claims you left the room on your own. Is it possible you fell without help? No. You were under stress. Could your mind have created assumptions that weren't accurate? No. Did you ever tell anyone that you felt unsafe before writing your journal? Yes. Who? My husband. And what did he say? That I was stressed. The courtroom murmured. The defense frowned. Is it possible you misunderstood her actions? No. Is it possible you misinterpreted normal household behaviors as threats? No. The attorney sighed. Why write a journal instead of reporting it to authorities? Because sometimes the truth needs time to build weight. And when no one believes you, proof becomes your voice. The judge paused for a long moment. It was clear who held the weight in the room. When Lena stepped down from the stand, Taylor squeezed her hand. "You did well." Outside, the cameras waited again. She walked past them with Noraya in her arms. She didn't hide. She didn't rush. She didn't shrink. Her silence wasn't fear this time. It was peace. That night, back home, she placed Noraya in her crib and made tea. The air smelled like lavender and warm milk. She sat at her table and opened a fresh journal. Not the old one. A new one. The first page was blank. She wrote one line. "Today, I chose my voice." The trial was still months away, but the hearing made something clear. Marlette was no longer untouchable. The truth had weight now, and Lena wasn't the only one carrying it. The staff statements, the footage, the medical reports, the journal entries, Maureen's testimony. Each piece built the story brick by brick, a story Marlette never expected to lose control over. Later that night, Maureen called. "I saw the hearing. You were steady. You didn't shake once." Lena smiled softly. "I shook on the inside." "That doesn't matter," Maureen replied. "Everyone shakes on the inside." They talked until midnight, about life, about fear, about moving forward. Maureen confessed she was looking for new work in town. Lena told her she had a couch anytime she needed it. For the first time since they left the estate, they both laughed more than once. A real laugh. The kind that carried relief. The kind that didn't feel borrowed. When they hung up, Lena checked on her daughter again. Noraya slept peacefully. One tiny hand curled near her cheek. Her breaths light and steady. Lena touched her back lightly. "You're safe. I promise." This time, she wasn't promising from fear. She was promising from strength, and she meant every word. Marlette Dane's estate looked quiet from the outside. The grand white exterior, the manicured hedges, the front gate with gold trim, but inside it was restless. She was under house arrest. The courtroom had allowed it until trial, pending ankle monitor, daily welfare checks, and no contact with the victim. That didn't sit well with Marlette. She was used to commanding boardrooms, orchestrating real estate deals with just a phone call, and silencing rumors before they had the chance to spread. Now, the phone barely rang, and when it did, it wasn't in her favor. The press had turned cold. The board of her company had voted to suspend executive duties pending legal resolution. Vendors cancelled meetings. Friends stopped visiting. She hadn't lost everything, yet, but her influence had fractures. Still, she didn't panic. She planned. Because Marlette Dane didn't collapse, she countered, and she still had one weapon left. Alrik. Alrik was adrift. The media had painted him as clueless at best, complicit at worst. His investors pulled out. Job offers dried up. The whispers were constant. He let his pregnant wife suffer in silence. He tried to stay low, ignored texts, deleted social media, disconnected from the world. But when Marlette called, he answered. "You need to speak to the press," she said plainly. "I'm not doing that. You're letting her win the narrative." Alrik exhaled. "It's not a game, Mother. You think staying quiet is noble?" She's controlling the conversation. "You look weak, passive. You're going to lose custody, your name, your future." "I don't want custody," he snapped. Silence. Then her voice clipped. "You want to throw away your child?" "I'm not throwing anything away," he muttered. "She doesn't want me involved. I'm respecting that. Respect doesn't mean disappearing. You disappeared from humanity the moment you locked a pregnant woman in the basement." Click. He ended the call. In her study, Marlette stared at the phone, fingers tight around the receiver. The first crack in Alrik's obedience had appeared. She poured herself a drink, sat by the window, and began typing an email to her legal team, to an independent publication, to anyone who would listen. She still had stories to tell. Twisted ones, perhaps, but in Marlette's mind, control was a form of love. And this story wasn't over. Lena didn't care what Marlette was doing. She had stopped looking her up, stopped reading headlines. Her energy was now reserved for Noraya, and for preparing her testimony. But deep down, a part of her remained alert. Ready, because she knew Marlette too well. Control didn't vanish. It hid. It waited for an opening. So when her lawyer called one morning with a new development, Lena wasn't surprised. "Marlette has submitted a statement through her legal team," Taylor said over the phone. "She's requesting visitation rights." Lena stopped rocking the stroller. "She's under trial," she said, voice calm. "She claims it's unrelated, that Naraya is still her grandchild. She says your testimony is biased by trauma and doesn't negate her role in the child's life." Lena's jaw tensed. "She locked me in a basement." "I know," Taylor said. "We're going to fight it. But she's leveraging loopholes in grandparent rights. Be prepared. This might go public." That night, Lena stared at Naraya's sleeping face. The baby's little hand rested on her chest. Safe, warm, breathing softly. The idea of Marlette near her again, even within a courtroom, chilled her. But Lena didn't flinch anymore. She picked up her pen, opened her new journal, and wrote, "If she thinks I'll fold, she hasn't read my ending." Meanwhile, Maureen received a letter. It was unmarked, no return address, delivered through a courier. Inside was a typed message. "You've said enough. You got involved in something you didn't understand. You should stay quiet now." Below that, a photo. Her younger brother walking home from school. Maureen dropped the envelope. Her hands shook. She locked her door, closed her curtains, then picked up her phone and called Lena. Lena answered on the second ring. "Something's wrong," Maureen said, her voice thin. Lena listened quietly, took down every word, and said only one thing when Maureen finished: "We go to the police, together." The following morning, they sat with Sergeant Vega again. She photographed the letter. Maureen filed a formal statement. The officer leaned back, sighing. "They're trying to intimidate you. Will it work?" Lena asked. Maureen looked at her. No, Marlette wasn't acting through the courts alone. She was trying to shake them. But they'd survived worse. They'd survived silence. Now, they had each other. They had evidence. And they had a child to protect. The next week, the judge denied Marlette's emergency motion for visitation. The court ruled that pending active felony prosecution related to the safety and well-being of the child's mother, Marlette Dane would have no access or contact rights, now or in the future, unless proven innocent. Taylor called it a small victory. Lena called it peace. The noise didn't stop. Articles spun versions of the story. Blogs picked sides. A radio host criticized Lena for alienating the child from family legacy. But for every false voice, there were 5 more that said, "We believe you." And that was enough. She didn't need everyone. She just needed truth. And a home where her daughter would never fear walking downstairs. Ulrich sat in the corner of his 1-bedroom apartment. The blinds were drawn. His phone face down. The TV on mute. He hadn't opened his laptop in days. Once, his name had commanded respect in pitch meetings and investment calls. Now, his resume was a liability. He hadn't seen Lena or Naraya since the hospital. His last message to Lena had gone unanswered, and he hadn't followed up. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to face the truth. He had stood by, quietly, while everything collapsed. And silence didn't sound noble anymore. It sounded weak. When his lawyer called with news of Marlette's rejected visitation motion, Ulrich didn't say a word. "She still plans to fight," the lawyer added. "She wants to position you as the better guardian in case custody becomes a factor." Ulrich scoffed. "I'm not taking her to court. You wouldn't have to. She wants to file it on your behalf. With your permission." The line went quiet. "Then, you still there?" Ulrich rubbed his face. "I'm not fighting Lena. You understand that if this goes to trial and she wins, there will be pressure on you to testify in her favor." Ulrich stood up, pacing. "Tell her to stop." "She won't." "Then tell her I'm out." And he hung up. At a small cafe in town, Lena met with Taylor again. Noraya sat in her carrier, content and cooing. Taylor brought paperwork. Updates. A court document. "This just came in," she said, sliding it over. Lena read it. It was a settlement offer. Marlette was offering a formal apology, not an admission of guilt, and a financial package if Lena would drop criminal charges. Lena stared at the paper. "How much?" "7 figures, Taylor said. "She's trying to make this go away before it hits the jury." Lena didn't flinch. "She still thinks money equals control." "You don't have to decide right now," Taylor said gently. "If you want to take it and walk away, no one will judge you." Lena folded the paper. "I'm not for sale." That night, she returned home and sat in Noraya's nursery. She rocked her daughter slowly, the chair creaking in rhythm. She thought about the basement, the silence, the cold, and the moment that door closed. She could still feel it sometimes, the quiet that wrapped around her like chains. That wasn't something money could fix. But justice could. Marlette's legal team was shocked when they received the rejection. Taylor sent a firm response. "Her voice doesn't have a price." "See you at trial." Marlette's team pushed back, offered more. They called it a compassionate offer to avoid a public circus. Lena didn't respond again. She didn't need to. Her silence wasn't fear. It was final. Maureen got another letter. This one wasn't anonymous. It came from a law firm, a defamation warning, suggesting her name be left out of all testimony. She brought it straight to Taylor. "They're reaching," Taylor said, barely glancing at the letter. "And they're panicking. They're trying to scare me." "Yes, because you're dangerous to them. You're honest." Maureen exhaled. "I won't back down." "You shouldn't. We're building something strong. Every threat they send only adds bricks to their own wall." Alric showed up at Taylor's office unannounced one afternoon. He looked thinner, tired, out of place in his wrinkled shirt and loosened tie. "I want to testify," he said. Taylor raised an eyebrow. "Against your mother?" "Yes." "Why?" He swallowed hard. "Because I saw what was happening, and I didn't do anything. I didn't open my mouth. I didn't defend Lena when she needed me most." "You realize your statement could crush your mother's defense." "I know." Taylor leaned forward. "Are you doing this for Lena, or for yourself?" "Both." She watched him carefully, then nodded. "Fine. We'll prep you." Lena was surprised when she got the call. "Taylor wants to bring Alric in." Her stomach turned. But her voice stayed calm. "If he tells the truth, let him." The trial date approached. Taylor's team finalized the list of witnesses. Lena, Maureen, the EMT who found her, the officer who reviewed the footage, and now, Alric Dane. The media spun new headlines. "Son of accused to testify. Will he stand with his mother or his wife?" Speculation flared. Marlette stayed out of sight. She gave no more statements, no more email interviews. Her silence now felt different, not strong, cornered. The final pre-trial meeting brought everyone into the same building. Different rooms, separated by glass, security, and court staff. Lena arrived with Noraya and Maureen. Taylor gave them a rundown. "Opening arguments will be short. They're trying to discredit you through emotional unreliability. You know what that means." Lena smiled faintly. "I've heard worse." She wasn't the same woman who walked into that house months ago. She was quieter now, but unshakable. Later that night, after Noraya fell asleep, Lena stood by the nursery window. The stars were faint, the wind gentle. She remembered the cold tile of the basement, the sound of her heartbeat when she realized no one was coming. But someone did come, Maureen. And now, she wasn't alone. She had her daughter. She had her truth. And she had something Marlette never could understand. When you survive silence, your voice becomes the loudest thing in the room. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Every seat filled. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder. Sketch artists positioned their boards, pencils already moving. The trial of Marlette Dane wasn't just about a family dispute anymore. It had become a conversation about power, silence, and the abuse no one talks about. The kind that's polite, hidden, quiet. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Lena sat beside Taylor in the front row. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. She wore no makeup, no dramatic colors, just a soft grey dress and flat shoes. She looked like a mother, a survivor, a woman who hadn't come for drama, but for truth. Marlette sat across the aisle, flawless as ever, perfectly styled, face unreadable. But this time, the room wasn't bending around her. The courtroom belonged to Lena now. The prosecution opened. Taylor stood with calm authority. This is not a case built on hysteria. It's not built on revenge. It's built on facts, handwritten, time-stamped, recorded, and corroborated. A pregnant woman was intentionally isolated. Misinformation was weaponized. Fear was leveraged. And when that didn't work, physical control was used. She paused. Let me be clear. Lena Burke was not dramatic. She was not confused. She was not weak. She was quiet. And that's what her abuser counted on. The jury listened closely. Lena didn't move. She didn't need to. Her presence already echoed. The defense countered with charm. They called it a family misunderstanding. They painted Lena as overwhelmed and sensitive during a complex pregnancy. They claimed Marlette's actions were misinterpreted attempts to help. And when they said the word help, Lena noticed how even the jurors flinched. Because no one helps by locking a door. Maureen was called first. She sat upright, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her voice trembled for the first few sentences, then steadied. I found the journal. I read about what she was experiencing. I checked her room. Her things were gone, her charger, her vitamins. And I remembered the way Mrs. Dane would stare sometimes. Say things with a smile but with a warning underneath. The defense tried to rattle her, suggested she was seeking attention, that maybe she had misread things. Maureen didn't flinch. I didn't imagine the door was locked. You didn't see it locked, did you? No, Maureen admitted. But when I tried to open it, it didn't move. And I know the sound of a locked door. It's different. And what made you decide to leave the estate? Because if I stayed, she wouldn't have made it. The courtroom went still. The EMT who found Lena testified next. She was dehydrated, cold, in shock, but alert. She asked about her baby first, not herself. Did she resist medical help? No, she thanked us. She didn't cry. She just kept whispering, "She's okay, she's okay." Then came the footage. The hallway camera showed Marlette walking to the basement door. She opened it, looked in, waited, then slowly closed it, turned a key, and walked away. No emotion on her face, no hesitation. The sound wasn't needed. The image spoke for itself. Lena knew her turn would come. She wasn't nervous. Not anymore. She had lived through the story they were trying to question. She had survived the house they were now analyzing from a distance. And she had written every detail when no one was looking. Her memory wasn't a script. It was a scar. When the judge called her name, Lena stood. She didn't glance at Marlette. Didn't look at the cameras. Just walked forward, sat, took the oath, and waited. Taylor began. Can you describe your first experience living at the Dane estate? Lena nodded slowly. It was beautiful on the outside, silent on the inside, but not the peaceful kind of silent. Did you notice any unusual behavior from your mother-in-law? She didn't yell, she didn't threaten. She made things disappear. She locked doors. She'd stand too close when I ate. She'd change the staff schedule so I was always alone. Did you tell anyone? I told Alric. What was his response? He said, I was tired. The jurors scribbled notes. What happened the night you were locked in the basement? Lena's voice didn't shake. I woke up. The lights were off. My phone was gone. I opened the hallway door, and it was dark. I walked toward the stairs, and someone pushed me. I fell. Did you see who it was? No. But I heard her voice through the vent. What did she say? She said I didn't belong, that the baby would be a Dane, but I wouldn't. Taylor paused. let the weight of those words sit, then nodded. No further questions. The defense attorney stood, tried to twist it. You were under physical stress, hormonal shifts, emotional trauma. Could that have distorted your perceptions? No. Is it possible you misunderstood Marlette's intentions? No. Did you ever try to leave the estate? Yes, twice. The car keys disappeared both times. Is there any proof she was the one who removed them? She told me she'd arranged for me to rest more after the second time, that she'd taken care of my distractions. So you interpreted that. I didn't interpret anything. She said it. The lawyer changed tactics. You're an educated woman. Why not call the police? I tried. My charger was missing. My backup phone too. That's when I started writing everything down. You chose to write instead of scream. Yes. The lawyer looked confused. Why? Lena leaned forward. Because screaming only helps if someone's willing to listen. Writing stays. The jury absorbed that. So did the press. So did Marlette, whose hands finally clenched beneath the table. When Lena stepped down, the courtroom was silent again. Not because they doubted her, but because they had nothing left to say. She returned to her seat, kissed Noraya's forehead, and whispered, "We're almost there." There was a stillness in the courtroom after Lena stepped down. Even the judge looked hesitant to speak, like the room needed time to breathe again. The prosecution called their next witness. Alric Dane. The name carried tension. People shifted in their seats. Reporters leaned forward. The moment had weight, not just because he was Marlette's son, but because no one knew which way he would swing. Marlette lifted her chin slightly. Lena didn't look at him as he walked past. She didn't need to. She was past expecting anything from him. Alric took the stand. He looked worn. His suit was simple, clean, but loose. He sat stiffly, hands resting on his thighs. He raised his right hand for the oath, then lowered it, eyes on the mic. Taylor approached. "State your name and relationship to the defendant." Alric Dane. "I'm her son." "And your relationship to Lena Burke?" "She's my ex-wife." "Do you recall the period when she moved into the Dane estate during her pregnancy?" "Yes." "Was that decision mutual?" "No. It was mine. I convinced her." "Why?" He sighed. "I had lost my job. We were expecting our first child. I thought it would be easier to stay somewhere we didn't have to worry about bills." "And did you observe any unusual treatment of your wife by your mother during that time?" His fingers tightened on his thighs. "Yes." Taylor nodded. "Go on." "She wasn't allowed in the main kitchen. Staff avoided her. My mother controlled when she could leave the property. Sometimes the gates were locked without her knowing. She changed Lena's vitamins, told her to rest constantly, discouraged her from going out. Did you question this behavior?" "I did at first. And then I stopped." "Why?" His voice cracked. "Because I was embarrassed. I didn't have a job. I thought if I questioned my mother, I'd lose the only security I had left. So I stayed quiet." He glanced at the jury. "And in doing that, I became complicit." Taylor didn't interrupt. She let him speak. "I watched Lena shrink, not physically, emotionally. She stopped smiling, stopped talking much, slept less. I assumed it was just pregnancy stress. I didn't want to believe my mother was hurting her, so I didn't believe it." "Do you regret that decision?" "Every day." "Did you know Lena was being kept in the basement?" "No." "But you suspected something?" "Yes." "Explain." He swallowed. "I was supposed to be out of town, but I came back early. I didn't tell anyone. When I arrived at the estate, I noticed the house was too quiet. Staff missing. My mother said Lena had gone to visit a friend. I asked which one. She didn't answer. I tried calling Lena. Her phone was off." He paused. "I didn't press." "Why not?" He stared at his hands. "Because I was used to letting my mother answer for everything." The courtroom was still. Taylor stepped back. No further questions. The defense attorney approached slowly. "Mr. Dane, do you understand your testimony could cost your mother her freedom?" "I do." You're testifying against your own blood. I'm testifying for my daughter. A murmur spread across the back row. The lawyer tried again. Did you ever directly witness your mucking a door? No. Did you ever see her push Lena? No. Then your entire testimony is based on interpretation. Alrik met his gaze. No, it's based on cowardice. Mine. When Alrik stepped down, he didn't look at his mother. He walked out of the courtroom without speaking to anyone. Lena didn't follow him, because she didn't need closure from him. His words had been enough, not for reunion, but for accountability. And that mattered more. Outside the courthouse, the press exploded. Dane's son defects on stand Alrik. Dane admits to abuse by silence. Quiet truth shifts the case. Taylor stayed focused. This isn't about public reaction, she reminded the team. This is about one thing, finishing what we started. Back at home, Lena rocked Noriah slowly as the news played faintly on her muted TV screen. She didn't need the volume. The images said enough. The world was watching Marlette unravel. And not because someone screamed at her. That night, Maureen texted, he told the truth. I didn't think he would. Lena replied, I didn't need him to, but I'm glad he did. Maureen, you were right not to expect anything. Lena, and I was right to survive without him. Marlette didn't testify. Her team advised against it. The footage, the journal, the testimony, it was too much. She sat in the courtroom quietly, surrounded by lawyers who once spoke with certainty. Now, they whispered nervously between breaks. Her world, built on control and silence, had turned against her. The judge recessed for deliberation. The jury retired. The room emptied. And for the first time in days, Lena stepped outside into fresh air, stood on the courthouse steps, and let the sunlight warm her skin. She closed her eyes and exhaled. The courthouse was quieter than usual the day the verdict came in. No flashbulbs, no shouting headlines, just a slow, simmering tension that hovered over everyone in the hallway. Inside courtroom 3B, the air was tight. Lena sat in the front row, Noriah sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside her. Taylor sat beside her, paperwork in hand, unread. Maureen was behind them, hands clasped tightly, lips pressed shut. Even the court reporters were unusually still. Marlette entered last, wearing the same neutral expression, impeccably dressed, hair pinned. But this time, something in her eyes looked different. Tired, cornered, maybe even scared. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The jury filed in, one by one, faces unreadable. They didn't look at anyone. Just ahead, the foreperson stood, envelope in hand. The judge nodded. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? We have, Your Honor. Time slowed for Lena. She didn't grip her chair. She didn't hold her breath. She didn't need to, because she had already survived the basement. Everything else, even this moment, was secondary. The clerk read aloud. In the matter of the State versus Marlette Dane, a pause. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts. A wave of silence, then an audible shift in the courtroom. Not gasps, not cheers, just release. The kind of quiet that comes when the truth is finally heavier than the lie. Marlette didn't blink, didn't speak. Her attorneys stood, requested house arrest continue until sentencing. Denied. The judge spoke clearly. Ms. Dane, you are hereby remanded into custody. Bail revoked. 2 deputies approached. Marlette stood without protest. She didn't look at Lena, not once. As they cuffed her, someone in the gallery whispered, "Finally." She was led out, and the door clicked closed behind her. Lena sat still. She didn't cry, didn't smile. She reached for Noriah's hand instead. Soft fingers wrapped around hers, even in sleep. Taylor leaned close. You did it. Lena shook her head gently. No, we all did. Outside, the sun felt warmer than usual. Lena lifted Noriah into her arms. Maureen joined her, said nothing, just walked beside her to the car. They didn't need to talk, because this part was done. The rest, That was up to life. The media ran the headlines by noon. Marlette Dane guilty. Former real estate mogul faces sentencing, daughter-in-law's journal used. To convict, she wrote IT all down. And IT saved her life. But Lena didn't read the articles. She brewed tea, fed Noriah, played soft music in the background, and when night came, she sat in her usual chair with her journal. She opened to a blank page and wrote, "The day she went to prison, I didn't feel vengeance, I felt air." In the following days, things began to settle. Her name was mentioned less in the media. The courthouse attention faded. People stopped staring at her in grocery stores. She was just a woman again, a mother, a survivor, and that was exactly what she wanted. Maureen moved into an apartment 3 blocks away. She started a non-profit with support from Taylor's office, a local resource center for women dealing with quiet abuse. They named it The Writings We Carry. The name came from Lena's journal. Maureen asked permission first. Lena simply said, "It belongs to all of us now." Alric wrote one final letter. He didn't ask to meet. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said thank you for testifying, for holding him accountable, for breaking the cycle. Lena read it once, folded it, then placed it in the back of her journal, not as closure, but as evidence that people can change, but not all at once, and not always for you. Sentencing came 4 weeks later, 10 years, with a minimum of 6 before parole review. The courtroom was empty that day. Lena didn't attend. She didn't need to. She'd already written her ending, and it didn't involve watching Marlette walk into another building she didn't deserve to control. Instead, Lena took Noriah to the park. It was early. The sky was soft with morning haze. Other mothers sat on benches, watched toddlers play. Lena walked slowly, pushing the stroller, her feet brushing along the gravel path. Noriah looked up at her, babbled something incoherent. Lena leaned down and smiled. "You don't know this yet," she whispered, "but your first lullaby," was my voice in the dark. And that voice? It hadn't broken. It had carried them both out. And now, it carried them forward. 3 months after the verdict, the world stopped asking Lena for interviews. The press faded. The headlines cooled. She wasn't a story anymore. She was a mother. And that's exactly who she wanted to be. Her morning started with Noriah's soft sounds, tiny coos in the early light. She didn't rush. They had routines now, calm ones. She'd prepare oatmeal with mashed banana, feed Noriah while music played softly in the background, open the windows, let light in. They took walks twice a day. Once in the morning, stroller quiet against the sidewalk. Once in the evening, held close to her chest in a wrap, her baby asleep before the first block ended. Peace didn't look loud. It looked like this. One Tuesday, she found Maureen outside her non-profit center, The Writings We Carry. The window had a quote painted across the glass. "You don't need a voice to be believed. You just need to write it down." Inside, the walls were warm, filled with soft green, cream, and browns. Subtle, calming. A waiting area with tea, child playmats, and pamphlets. No buzzing electronics. Just quiet help. A woman Lena didn't know stood at the counter, nervous, head down. Maureen stood beside her, not speaking, just being there. Lena watched as the woman took a small notepad, began to write something down, and sat. She didn't interrupt, because healing sometimes starts without words. Later, over tea, Maureen said, "You know I was scared every day in that house." "I know," Lena replied. "I used to pray someone would speak up, that someone would say, 'This isn't normal.'" Lena looked at her. "You did. I waited too long." "No. You waited until you were brave enough. That's not wrong. That's timing." Maureen looked down at her mug. "You're not the same woman who moved into that estate. I wouldn't survive it today," Lena said honestly. "But the woman I was back then, she wrote the map I followed out." Noriah began crawling the following week. She'd been scooting for weeks, but that morning she pushed forward, arms and knees awkward and determined. Lena clapped softly, laughing as she followed with her camera. She posted the clip privately, Not to the world, just to a secure thread between her and the handful of people who'd stood beside her. Taylor, Maureen, her old co-worker from the clinic, the nurse from the hospital, people who had names, not headlines. One afternoon, Taylor stopped by unexpectedly. She brought sandwiches, some paperwork, and something else. "Local school is doing a writing program for high school girls," she said, placing a folder on the table. "They want someone to come speak, not about the case, about survival and stories, about owning your words." Lena hesitated. "I'm not a speaker. You wrote a journal that convicted a multi-millionaire matriarch. I was scared." "That's exactly why they need to hear you." Lena didn't answer right away. She looked toward Noriah, who was babbling in her playpen, cheeks full of animal crackers, then nodded. "Okay." The high school was small. The classroom had 23 girls. No microphones, no cameras, just chairs in a circle and a teacher with kind eyes. Lena held her notes, untouched, then let them rest in her lap. She started by telling them about the girl she used to be, quiet, polite, taught to believe silence was strength, and how one day she found out silence wasn't always protection. Sometimes it was the very thing someone counted on to trap you. She told them about her journal, not the contents, the reason, because if they ever found me gone, I wanted someone to know I was real. A girl in the second row blinked fast, covering her face with her hoodie. Another girl whispered, "Thank you." When Lena finished, no one clapped. They just stayed quiet, the good kind of quiet, the kind that happens when the truth has been heard. She visited the class once a month after that, never as a celebrity, just as someone who'd walked out of a locked door and lived to write about it. She didn't offer advice. She offered her presence. That was enough. One Saturday, she took Noriah to the lake trail. The wind was gentle. The sky was wide. She sat on the bench at the far end of the trail, the one with carvings from couples and friends, initials etched into old wood. She brought her journal, opened to the final page, and wrote, "The worst thing she ever did wasn't lock the door. It was make me believe I wouldn't be heard if I ever spoke. But I was, not because I shouted, but because I never stopped writing." And when she closed the book, she smiled, because that part of her story was done, and the rest wouldn't be written in a courtroom. It would be written in parks, in classrooms, on bedtime blankets, and in the first words of a little girl named Noriah. The moving truck wasn't big, just one man, one dolly, and 5 boxes with Lena's handwriting on them. Her new home sat at the end of a tree-lined street, a small blue cottage with white trim, a fenced-in yard, and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. No marble floors, no tall mirrors, no security gates. It didn't echo when you walked across it. It just breathed. She hadn't planned on buying so soon, but a local couple was relocating and offered the home at a modest price after hearing her story. They said, "Someone like you should own this place." So she signed. Now it was hers. Maureen helped with the baby while the last box was carried in. Noriah giggled in the living room, clapping as the mover made funny faces. Lena unpacked slowly. No rush, no stress. She opened a cabinet and placed her teacups inside, lined her books on the shelf, near the window, and hung a small canvas of wildflowers above the kitchen table. Everything simple, everything real. Later that afternoon, Maureen stood in the doorway, holding her phone like it was burning her hand. "I need to go see them." Lena looked up from where she was folding baby clothes. "Your family?" Maureen nodded. "I haven't seen my brother in nearly a year. My parents haven't spoken to me since I left the estate. They think I turned on something sacred." Lena didn't try to fix it. She simply said, "Do you want me to come?" Maureen smiled, soft and tired. "No. I think I need to do this one alone." She left later that day, not with a heavy bag, just with a straight spine. Lena spent the evening on the porch swing. Noriah had fallen asleep early, worn out from crawling from room to room, squealing at her own reflections in the window glass. The sun dipped low. Fireflies blinked in the yard. She thought of her father. He would have loved this house, would have sat in the corner with his crossword, offering quiet commentary on the color of the curtains or the smell of fresh coffee. She missed him most in moments of stillness, not during the chaos, but when the world finally calmed and she wished he could sit beside her to witness it. Maureen called the next morning. Her voice was scratchy but sure. They listened. Not all of them believed me, but they listened. Lena leaned back into her pillow. That's more than most get. I'm coming home. She paused. Feels good to call it that again. They celebrated with pancakes. Homemade. Slightly burnt. Covered in too much syrup. Naraya smeared hers across the table, delighted by the mess. Maureen brought a small gift. A photo frame with a picture of the three of them from the day they launched the Writings We Carry. We don't look like survivors, Maureen said. We look like women who made it out, Lena replied. Even better. That evening, Lena took a walk. Just her and the journal tucked in her tote. She retraced her steps from the first day she arrived in the new town. Past the bookstore, the clinic she once applied to, and the park with the wooden bridge. She stopped at the bridge, sat down, opened to a fresh page, and began to write. Today the house felt like mine. Not just a roof, a decision. No locks on the outside, only keys on the inside. When she returned home, she found Naraya curled up on Maureen's lap, snoring lightly. Maureen looked up. She's starting to look like you. Lena smiled. I hope she grows up stronger. She already is. There was no drama, no big moment. Just two women in a warm house, one baby asleep between them, and a quiet sense. That life, after everything, was finally moving in the right direction. No audience, no applause, just peace. And that was everything. The flyer had been taped to the window of the cafe for 2 weeks. Community harvest dinner, Sunday at 5 p.m, Town Hall Pavilion. Bring a dish, bring your story. Lena saw it every morning. She picked up her tea. At first she ignored it. Big gatherings still made her uneasy. Too many eyes, too many assumptions. But something about the second line, bring your story, stayed with her. On Sunday, she made sweet cornbread with honey butter. Naraya sat on the counter, babbling to her mixing spoon like it was an old friend. By 4:30, Lena had changed into a soft burgundy dress, slipped on flats, and buckled Naraya into her stroller. She hesitated at the door, then whispered, "We're safe," and stepped out. The town hall pavilion glowed with string lights. Rows of folding tables lined with casseroles, pies, vegetable platters, crockpots labeled in marker. Kids ran in small circles. A jazz trio played quietly in the corner, and no one stared when Lena walked in. They smiled, nodded, moved over to make room. "First time here?" someone asked. Lena nodded. "Well, welcome. You're Lena, right?" "Yes. I'm Miriam. My sister lives down the street from you. Says your little one has the sweetest laugh." Lena smiled. "She does?" The meal felt like a hug. Not because of the food, though that was warm too, but because of the ease in the room. No one wanted anything. No one tried to ask about the trial, the past, or what she had written. They just passed the cornbread, told stories about their pets, shared how their tomatoes hadn't survived the last frost. It was normal, and after everything Lena had lived through, normal felt like magic. Halfway through the evening, a woman stood near the small stage. She tapped the mic. "If anyone wants to share something, a memory, a lesson, a thought, feel free." Lena watched several people take turns. A retired teacher shared a poem. A high school boy played a short guitar piece. A couple told the story of how they met over spilled hot chocolate in 1986. Then the mic sat unused for a few minutes. Lena stood. She didn't plan to, but her legs carried her forward. The crowd quieted. She took the mic, smiled softly and said, "I used to be someone who didn't speak unless asked. I believed that being quiet was the same as being good. Safe, small." She paused. "I found out the hard way that silence can protect the wrong people." She glanced at Naraya, now asleep in her stroller. "I wrote everything down once. because I didn't think anyone would ever listen. But now, I don't need to write to be believed." Her voice didn't tremble, "because I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to speak anymore. No clapping, not right away, just quiet respect." Then someone stood, then another, a soft wave of applause, not for the drama, but for the truth. After the dinner, people approached with warm smiles. A woman with silver hair said, "I wrote journals too. No one ever read them, but I think maybe I wrote them for me." A man in his 40s said, "I never said anything when my neighbor was hurt by her husband. I wish I had. Thank you for reminding me." Even the mayor, a petite woman in boots and a denim jacket, said, "Next time you speak, let me know. We'll bring more chairs." Lena thanked them all, not because she needed the praise, but because it reminded her that stories matter, and sometimes they ripple further than you think. That night, Maureen texted, "How'd it go?" Lena replied, "I spoke. Not about her, about me." Maureen, "That's the best way to end it, Lena, or begin it." Back at the house, she tucked Noraya in, kissed her forehead, then stepped out onto the porch with her journal. The wind was light. She opened to the last page and wrote, "Tonight, I told the truth. Not the one about the house, not the one about the trial, the one about me. I'm not silent anymore, and I don't need permission to speak." She closed the book, not because the story was over, but because now she could write the next one out loud. The air smelled like cinnamon and clean wood. It was mid-October, and the trees behind Lena's home had begun their annual transformation. Gold, copper, burgundy. A soft rustle echoed every time the wind passed through them. She stood at the window with her morning tea, watching Noraya in her onesie, chasing a plastic spoon across the rug. There was peace in this, not just safety, but rhythm, and after everything Lena had lived through, rhythm felt like luxury. She didn't rush back into work. It wasn't about fear, it was about alignment. "I want whatever I do next to make sense with how I feel now," she told Maureen one afternoon. They were sitting outside on the porch, shelling peas like they were 90 years old, because they liked it. "Then you're ahead of most people," Maureen replied. "Most go back because they're afraid of being still." Lena nodded. "Still saved me. I don't want to disrespect it, but she missed helping people, not for applause, not for validation, but because it made her feel useful. And slowly, quietly, the right opportunity found her. The town's small physical therapy center, the one by the library, posted a note on their door. Hiring, 1 PT, part-time, flexible hours. Experience with maternal wellness a plus. She went in, not with a resume in hand, but a smile. The woman behind the desk blinked. "You're Lena Burke, aren't you?" Lena waited for judgment, but the woman smiled wider. "My sister was in your prenatal class 2 years ago. Still does those breathing exercises. You changed her life." Lena blinked back warmth. "I'd like to help more people. If you'll have me, we'd be lucky to." A week later, she started 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Noraya stayed with a trusted neighbor during the hours, a widow named Miss Ala who ran a quiet daycare out of her home. The first morning, Lena dropped her off. She lingered at the door. "You don't have to worry," Miss Ala said gently. "I was a NICU nurse for 27 years. Your girl will be safe with me." Lena smiled. "Thank you. That means everything." She walked out, heart tight, but free. The clinic was a cozy space with cream walls and soft jazz in the background. Her first patient was a woman named Chell, recovering from a complicated delivery. "I heard you're the calm one," Chell joked. Lena smiled. "I prefer steady." She led her through slow stretches, taught her posture breathing, and gently pressed along her spine as they talked. "I didn't think my body would ever feel normal again," Chell whispered. Lena looked her in the eye. "It won't be the same. But it can be strong again, just differently." Tears welled in Chell's eyes, and in that moment, Lena knew she was where she needed to be. Evenings became sacred. Noraya would crawl to the door when Lena came home. Her giggles, the kind that filled rooms without trying, greeted Lena before anything else. They'd cook together. Well, Lena cooked. Noriah played with measuring cups. Then they'd eat, bathe, read stories, and sit on the porch. Maureen joined often. Sometimes with pie. Sometimes with nothing but her presence. "I never thought I'd end up here," she said once, swinging gently in the porch chair. "Not in this town, not in this kind of peace." Lena sipped her tea. "Neither did I. But maybe we didn't end up here. Maybe we started here." Maureen smiled. "You always know how to word things like a poem." Lena chuckled. "That's because poems are my therapy." Kasia came by once a week. Sometimes for dinner. Sometimes just to drop off books. One evening, he brought an old lullaby record and a box of ginger cookies. "I figured it was my turn to bring something soft," he said with a wink. They played the record as Noriah fell asleep in her arms. Lena didn't label what was happening between them. Not yet. There was time. There was space. For once, she didn't feel like she had to rush. One Saturday they went to the farmer's market. Kasia carried Noriah in one of those hip-hugging slings, grinning as she tried to grab pears. Lena watched them from the bread stall. An older woman leaned beside her. "Your husband's good with kids." Lena smiled, but corrected her softly. "He's a friend." The woman winked. "Honey, the good ones always start that way." That afternoon, Kasia stayed for lunch. They ate grilled veggies and soft rolls in the backyard. Lena looked at him across the table. "I'm not broken," she said, unprompted. "I know. I'm also not looking to fill anything missing." Kasia nodded. "Neither am I." Lena tilted her head. "Then what are you looking for?" He looked at Noriah, then back to her. "Peace, growth, shared stillness." Lena exhaled slowly. "That's a good start." Before he left, he kissed her hand. Not her lips, not her cheek. Her hand, like someone who knew she had carried too much, and now deserved to be handled gently. Lena closed the door that day with a heart that didn't race. It simply settled, like water in a deep, calm well. She wrote in her journal that night, "Healing isn't loud. It doesn't arrive like a parade. It's slow. It creeps in when you're folding laundry, or when a child giggles at something you didn't notice, or when someone touches your hand without asking for more. I used to think I had to fight to survive, but now I think I just had to rest long enough to remember how to live." The balloons were simple. 3 shades, pale peach, soft ivory, and a dusty rose, tied to wooden chairs in Lena's backyard. The cake was small, homemade, carrot with cream cheese frosting, no spectacle, no banners, just family. Noriah's first birthday had come, and it felt like a line in the sand, not just because she had survived, but because they all had. Maureen set out paper plates. Miss Arla brought mashed sweet potatoes. Kasia tuned a soft string melody on his travel guitar. A few kind-hearted neighbors arrived, ones who never asked what happened, but always waved when Lena passed with the stroller. The sun was mild. The trees whispered. Noriah giggled the way only babies do, with her whole body. "Make a wish," Maureen teased, as Lena lit the single candle. Lena smiled. "I already did." She didn't say it out loud, but her wish was this: let my daughter grow up never mistaking control for love. Let her know quiet does not mean weakness. Let her trust her own voice, even when others try to silence it. She blew out the candle, and the world didn't change. But her world had. Later that afternoon, as Lena was clearing cups off the porch, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. It wasn't familiar. Neither was the man who stepped out. Tall, clean-cut, late 40s, with faint lines around his mouth. He walked slowly toward the porch, carrying a small white envelope. "Lina Burke?" She nodded slowly. "Yes? I'm Detective Marshall Green, Cold Case Division. Asheville PD." Her heart slowed. She didn't speak, just stepped down quietly. "I'm not here to cause any disruption," he said quickly. "Just closure." He handed her the envelope. "We reopened an investigation tied to Marlette Dane's case." Lena blinked. That case was closed. She served time. Yes, ma'am. But there were inconsistencies. Someone reported a second incident, a different employee, backdated journal entries, and... He paused. Your ex-husband came up in more than one statement. Lena didn't flinch. She only said he always knew. He just chose not to know. Green looked at her, long and respectful. Would you be willing to talk again? Off record? Nothing formal. Lena shook her head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded. If that changes, you have my card. He turned to leave. But before he got back in the car, he added, most people think silence is weakness, but sometimes silence is the last form of grace we give the people who don't deserve it. Lena watched him drive away, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel hunted by her past. She felt separate from it, like a survivor looking at a storm through a window, dry and safe. That night, Maureen stayed behind to help with cleanup. They didn't talk about the detective. Instead, Maureen shared a funny story about Noraya trying to drink from the dog's bowl earlier. They laughed until Lena cried. Not loud, not messy, just soft drops falling on her sleeves like overdue rain. Maureen didn't interrupt. She just reached over and held her hand. After Noraya went down for the night, Lena stood in her living room and looked at the photos on the mantel. A snapshot of her holding Noraya the day they were discharged from the hospital. A Polaroid Maureen had taken of Lena asleep on the couch, Noraya curled on her chest, and one Kassir had taken of the backyard trees, golden in the afternoon light, with Noraya crawling toward them. No photos of pain, no photos of what was done to her, only the life that grew in spite of it. She pulled out her journal and began a new entry. I used to think survival was the end of the story, but survival is only the pause between chapters. Healing writes the next one, and love, the kind that doesn't try to fix you, only hold you while you find your way, fills the margins. A few days later, Kassir came by with a small wrapped box. Late birthday present, he said, handing it to her. Inside was a pendant, a simple silver circle. On the back, engraved, still here, still whole. Lena traced her thumb over it. She looked at him. I never told you what happened in full. You don't need to, he replied gently. Don't you want to know? I want to know you, and I already do. They sat on the porch in silence, not awkward, not unsure, just real. After a while, she said, You ever think about the word rebuild? Kassir glanced sideways. All the time. I think sometimes we use it like we're supposed to recreate what we lost. He nodded slowly. But I don't want the old structure back. I want something that breathes better, with more light. Kassir smiled. I'll help you lay the bricks, he said. That night, she didn't feel afraid of sleeping. The basement was a memory. The child she carried was now a child who stood, and the woman who once waited for rescue had become the rescuer of herself. 2 winters had passed. The wind still whispered through the trees behind Lena's home, but the sound no longer made her pause. Her daughter was now running, through the hallway with socked feet and big laughs. Noraya had inherited Ulrich's curls, Lena's calm, and a stare that stopped strangers in their tracks. That girl didn't flinch when she fell. She got up, looked at the floor, and patted it like it owed her an apology. Lena watched her daughter every day like a quiet prayer being answered. She still worked part-time at a new clinic just outside Hendersonville. Smaller space, better energy. No one there asked about the past. They just saw results. Her therapy clients came back every week with progress. Some brought cookies, others brought stories. One old man said, You don't talk much, but you fixed my back and gave me my garden back. You're the real deal. She smiled at that. No more marble estates. No more frozen stares over breakfast tables. No more proving herself in rooms she didn't ask to be in. This, right here, was enough. Until the knock came. It was a Tuesday morning. Lena was slicing strawberries for Noraya when she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Not frantic, not hesitant. Rhythmic. She opened the door and froze. It wasn't a stranger. It was a woman in her early 40s. Hair tied back, sleek coat, tablet in hand. "Ms. Burke," the woman said, professional tone, "my name is Adrian Lovell. I'm part of the State Investigation Board on corporate real estate fraud." Lena's heart slowed. Adrian continued, "We're re-examining the Dane Property Holdings case. Not just what happened to you, but patterns of coercion, labor violations and fraudulent leases across multiple counties." Lena didn't speak. "We have reason to believe your journal wasn't the only piece of evidence Marlette tried to erase. And we believe your testimony could reopen several asset seizures she manipulated using illegal tenant intimidation tactics." Lena folded her arms. "I told the police what happened," she said quietly. "Yes," Adrian nodded. "And that testimony helped put her away. But this isn't about the basement. This is about legacy theft. Families who lost their stores, elderly tenants forced to sign over deeds, developers silenced." Lena didn't blink. "You need a public victim. We need a credible witness. One who doesn't owe anyone." Lena glanced behind her. Noraya stood at the hallway edge, juice box in hand. She looked back. "I have a daughter. I'm not walking back into courtrooms." Adrian's voice softened. "I understand, but people still suffer because of what she built. You're the only person she couldn't control. That makes your story matter more than ever." Lena didn't answer. Adrian handed her a card. "If you change your mind, call me. We'll protect your name as long as we can. But the truth has a shelf life, and some doors only open for a while." That night, Lena lay awake. The card was on the nightstand. She hadn't touched it, but the weight of it filled the room. Maureen noticed something was off the next day during their usual grocery run. "You okay?" she asked, pushing the cart. "You've been slicing produce like it owes you rent." Lena hesitated. "They want me to testify. Again. About her. About what she did to other people." Maureen paused. "Would it help them?" "Yes." "Would it hurt you?" "I don't know." Maureen tilted her head. "Then maybe the question is, does staying quiet help you anymore?" Kassir found her later that evening sitting on the porch steps, shoeless, watching the rain. "You ever get tired of being asked to be brave?" she whispered. He sat beside her, close but not touching. "All the time." They didn't talk for a while. Then Lena said, "If I speak, I become the symbol again. The poor woman in the basement. The survivor. But that's not my story anymore." Kassir nodded. "So tell them the new one." She looked at him. "The one where you didn't just survive, you started something better." The next morning she made a call. Adrian answered on the first ring. Lena said 6 words. "Tell me what you need exactly." They gave her a suit. Simple. Navy. Not too stiff, not too soft. "You need to look firm," Adrian said, "but not hard. You don't have to be loud. Just don't blink." Lena smiled faintly. "I haven't blinked in years." They practiced questions in a hotel suite 3 towns over. Neutral ground. Adrian and 2 attorneys walked her through timelines, property seizures, coercion cases. They showed her documents, recordings, contracts signed under threat of eviction. One man lost his barbershop after 40 years. Another woman, a single mother, had been offered $1,000 to leave her family's antique shop before demolition. Marlette had masked cruelty under business deals. Lena kept her journal with her, not as evidence, as reminder. This was never about revenge. It was about the next girl who might be told she was too soft to matter. The night before the hearing, Lena stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Her daughter was asleep in the next room. Kassir was on the couch, grading music theory assignments. Maureen had baked banana bread and left 2 slices in the fridge with a sticky note, "For the brave one. The world doesn't deserve you, but it needs you." Lena closed her eyes. She thought of the cellar, the cold, the silence. Marlette's voice saying, "That child will be a Dane, but you won't." She opened her eyes. "No," she whispered. "She'll be Burke. And I am too." The courthouse was full. Journalists, local vendors, even 2 former tenants who'd never met her. but came to see the woman who stood up and stayed standing. The opposing attorney looked slick, young, Ivy League posture. He tried to rattle her, asked about her past, about her therapy license, about the possibility of mental distress during pregnancy. She didn't flinch. She answered calmly, directly, without ego. But when he tried to suggest she overreacted to Marlette's behavior, she said, "She locked me in a room without heat, while 7 months pregnant. If you call that an overreaction, I hope no one you love ever needs compassion." The room went still. Even the judge paused before nodding for the next question. During a break, Lena stepped outside. Reporters waited behind tape lines. She didn't speak to them. But one woman, older, grey hair tucked under a knitted hat, walked up and held her hand. "My son," she said, voice trembling. "He ran a coffee stand. Marlette raised his rent 4 times in 2 years. Took everything. We had to move in with relatives. He blamed himself. But you helped us see it wasn't him. It was her." Lena didn't know what to say. She just held the woman's hand tighter. The court called her back in. Adrienne leaned close. "This is your last question. Answer it in your words. No edits." The judge asked, "Ms. Burke, do you have anything to add for the record before this committee decides whether to pursue restitution and further action against the Dane estate?" Lena stood. She didn't clear her throat, didn't check notes. She looked at the panel and said, "For years, Marlette Dane made people think they had no choice. That power meant control. That silence was survival. I want it on record. Silence was never survival. It was the trap. Speaking is what saved me. And it might save someone else." The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you." By week's end, the board ruled in favor of full investigation and asset re-evaluation. Several commercial properties were reopened for tenant review. Families received restitution notices. Maureen's cousin, who'd once worked for Dane Holdings, got his job back with full pay restoration. And Marlette, even from prison, lost what she valued most, the illusion of control. That weekend, Lena and Naraya planted daisies in their small garden. Kassir played soft guitar chords in the background. Maureen showed up with 2 fruit pies and said, "I brought courage snacks." They laughed. Naraya bent over and said, "Mama, this flower's leaning." Lena knelt beside her. "That's okay," she said. "Sometimes things grow strongest when they bend first." The house smelled like oranges and bread. Maureen had baked again. The scent traveled from the kitchen, down the hallway, and into the living room where Lena sat braiding Naraya's curls. It was a soft Sunday, the kind of day without appointments or errands, just air and sun and time. Naraya sat on a cushion at Lena's feet, babbling about birds she saw from the porch and the flowers she wanted to pick. "Only the yellow ones," she insisted. "Because yellow means happy." Lena smiled. "Then we'll plant more yellow." Kassir stepped in from the backyard, holding a small wooden wind chime he'd made with his students. He kissed Lena's head. "Still want this over the porch?" he asked. She nodded. "It's peaceful." He hung it by the door. The breeze caught it gently. For once, nothing inside her twisted. No panic, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. That afternoon, Lena found the journal. The old one. From the estate. She'd tucked it away in a locked drawer behind medical files and letters from attorneys. She hadn't opened it since the final hearing. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. The entries were short, plain, phone gone, charger missing again, lights flickered, staff avoided eye contact. Prenatal pills looked different, bitter. Each sentence felt like a shadow of herself. But she didn't cry. She read the final entry aloud. "If I survive this, I will never forget that being soft saved me. I didn't break. I bent. And I'm still here." That night, Naraya crawled into her bed. "Can I sleep with you?" she asked. Lena pulled back the covers. "Of course. Did you have a mommy?" "Yes." "Did she sing to you?" "She did." "Did she stay with you always?" Lena hesitated. She stayed as long as she could. Then she became the sky. Naraya looked up. You'll stay, right? Lena pressed her hand over her daughter's heart. Always. Right here. In the quiet dark, Kassir knocked gently before peeking in. I'll sleep in the chair, he said. So you're not alone. You don't have to. I want to. He pulled the throw blanket from the end of the bed and curled into the armchair. Lena watched him drift off, one hand over his chest. Safe. She didn't need fireworks, or grand gestures, or redemption speeches. She needed this, the steady heartbeat of someone who never asked her to shrink. The next morning, Noraya danced into the kitchen. Mommy, Maureen said we can bake cookies for my school day. Lena raised a brow. School day? I'm starting soon, she said proudly. We need backpacks. And stickers. Maureen winked from the counter. They're having an open play and learn program down at the rec center. Thought she could join. Lena exhaled. It was happening. Her child was growing. Life was moving again, not like a train, but like a gentle tide. Later, at the rec center, a woman approached Lena. You're Noraya's mom? I am. She told my daughter, your cookies make bad dreams go away. Lena laughed. That's the butter. It's magical. The woman paused. You're the one from the story, aren't you? The basement? Lena's smile didn't falter. Yes. I just wanted to say thank you for not letting people forget. Lena nodded. I won't let her forget either. But not with fear. With truth. Back home, Kassir grilled dinner while Maureen and Noraya painted flower pots. Lena sat on the porch swing, the wind chime whispering above her. The sun lowered behind the treetops. Soft gold, warm air, no locks on any doors. She opened a notebook. A fresh one, blank. She wrote, Chapter 1, The Future. It doesn't wait for permission. It begins when we do. Lena hadn't been back to Asheville in almost 3 years. Not since the court hearing. Not since she left the estate with a baby in her arms and a journal in her bag. Now, she was here again. But not for revenge. Not for answers. Just closure. Kassir parked outside the old clinic where she used to work. She hadn't asked him to come. He simply said, if you're going, I'm going too. Noraya was with Maureen back home. Lena stepped out and inhaled deeply. The streets were the same. The coffee shop still had the same chalkboard signs. Even the lamppost where she and Alric once kissed after a prenatal class was still tilted slightly to the left. Funny how the world keeps its shape after your life breaks. They walked into the clinic together. The new receptionist looked up. Can I help? Oh, you're Lena Burke, aren't you? Lena smiled. I used to work here. We still have your stretchboard hanging in the back room. Kassir grinned. What's a stretchboard? Prenatal therapy aid, Lena explained. Helps with hip pain. I made one out of pool noodles and PVC pipe. It worked wonders. The receptionist's eyes lit up. You're kind of a legend around here. The director invited her to speak to a group of young expectant mothers that afternoon. Lena stood in front of a semicircle of women, bellies round, eyes tired, hands fidgeting. She told them about breathing exercises, about self-care, about recognizing the difference between stress and sabotage, and without naming names, she told them the truth. Sometimes, the people closest to you won't understand your softness. They'll think it's weakness, but you'll learn. Softness is your anchor. It keeps you human when others forget how. One mother burst into tears. Another whispered, "Thank you for not making this sound like a fairy tale." That evening, they visited her old house. It was freshly painted. A new family lived there. Kids' shoes on the porch, a welcome sign, wind chimes, just like hers. Kassir held her hand as she stared at it. "Want to knock?" he asked. "No," she said. "I like knowing it's full again." On the drive out of town, they passed the Dane estate. The for sale sign stood crooked near the front gate. Rumors said Marlette had taken a plea deal to avoid more prison time. Her assets liquidated, her properties sold off, her name erased from local charities and business boards. Alric had reportedly left the state. Lena didn't stop. didn't look twice. That chapter was closed. Not with rage, with peace. Back home, Maureen had made apple cobbler. Noriah was wearing oversized gardening gloves, holding a half-potted sunflower. "I told it to grow like Mommy," she said proudly. "Even when it rains." Lena bent and kissed her forehead. "It will." That night, while Noriah slept, Kasia joined Lena on the porch. "Can I ask you something?" He said. "Of course. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened?" Lena didn't answer right away. "I used to," she finally said. "But then I think of her, and you, and Maureen, and I realize I don't wish it away. I just wish it hadn't hurt so much getting here." Kasia nodded slowly. "You made it, though." She turned to him. "Would you ever consider adopting her?" He blinked. "Only if you want that." Lena took his hand. "She already sees you as her father. I see you as her home." His eyes softened. "Then yes, I'd be honored." 1 week later, they filed the paperwork. Not to erase the past, but to write a new page. A year later, Maureen opened her own cleaning company. She called it Clean Grace. It wasn't flashy, but it paid the bills, and she hired women who needed second chances. Lena helped set up the business plan. Kasia built the website. Noriah made the logo, a butterfly holding a broom. Sometimes, Lena would catch Noriah playing doctor with her dolls. "Push, breathe, push," she'd say. Lena smiled every time. They didn't become rich. They didn't go viral. There was no best-selling book, no documentary, just a quiet life where laughter was the loudest sound in the house, where being seen mattered more than being praised, where kindness didn't need an audience, and softness ruled everything. Because in the end, it wasn't Lena's strength that saved her. It was her refusal to turn cruel in a cruel place. That was her legacy, and her daughter would carry it like armor. If this story moved you, let it remind you of this. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't always roar or strike back. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, steady. Like Lena, the strongest people are often the ones who suffer in silence and still choose to love, still choose to build, still choose to live without hate. Tell us in the comments, do you think Ulrich was complicit or truly blind to what his mother did? And what would you have done if you were Maureen, holding the key to someone else's freedom? Drop your thoughts below. We read every single one. If you believe more people need stories that speak about quiet justice, real healing, and lasting love, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. New stories drop every day, and each one reminds us sometimes the most powerful redemption comes from survival. Thank you for watching. Stay kind, stay strong, and never let anyone define your worth, not even family.